Okay. Nobody wants to see your butt. Or do they? It is a very fluffy butt. Hello and welcome to the land of fluffy butts, starring Nugget Shadows, Nugget the cat, son of Sabrina Shadows and a stray. I am Victoria Wilder, author of Lullaby of the Lilitu and Vadamakor, Songs of My Soul, and one of the short stories in Voices of Christmas. This little thing I'm going to be reading to you. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, subscribe, and tell me how much you love me because I need to feel some love these days. Pandemic has hit us hard in many different ways. If you're not new to the channel, thank you again for being here. You already know what I have written, so I appreciate you being here. And today we're actually going to be reading one of my short stories called A Child for Christmas from the 3-story collection Voices of Christmas that I did in collaboration with 2 other wonderful, amazing, talented authors from my group Voices of Color. And when I say my group, not ownership wise, I just mean I'm in that group and I cherish it. And so today I am going to be reading that. I actually just woke up a couple of hours ago and immediately jumped into a thing that lasted 2 hours, a online virtual event that lasted 2 hours, and then like literally right after that I was like, let me go ahead and read. I am going to get back to write-ins pretty soon because I do have to get back to Scourge of the Lilitu. I finally yesterday finished a short story um, that I have been just hesitating on finishing. I have really a real big struggle with finishing power. Like I tend to like run away sometimes when things get to that point where it looks like it's about to be finished. My brain is just like, oh, you know what? Maybe you don't want to get to that point. Go away. And that's something I really, really have to push past. So I was struggling to write this short story for like a month and a half, 2 months. I don't know 2 months, and it's only like 2,000 words, if that. It's a very short story, and I just could not, for the life of me, get those last couple of paragraphs, that ending part, out of me, and that's something that I really, really cherish NaNoWriMo for because that's the main reason I was able to finish my 2 novels, Lullaby of the Lilitu and Diva. I was able to write those because of NaNoWriMo. I don't know if we're gonna have Nano this year. Like, obviously, we're gonna have it, but I just don't know what's going to be going on in November in the United States, health wise, politically, black wise. I don't know. I'm trying to move by the spring if I can manage it, and the country I wanted to move in won't let me in. So, lots of stuff is happening that is interrupting the writing energy, but I really, really, really want to get Scourge of the Lilitu out to you guys by 2021, and have that done and ready and like not rushed, So like I don't want to be like in November just finishing the first draft and then trying to get it out to you guys in the next few months after that. I want to have that draft done much sooner, like the end of August, September at the latest. Lex, what are you doing? Are you doing a lewd? He's doing a cleanse. He's doing a cleanse. Oh, that's a lewd. Nobody wanted to see that, buddy. And if they did want to see that, they should probably not come to my channel for that, because that's just not what we do here. No, ma'am. That's for your OnlyFans. Wouldn't that be gross? Having an OnlyFans for a cat, and then it's just like a bunch of lewds. Oh my god, no. So that's why he's named Nugget, because he's got them nuggets, even though when he's fixed, he won't have nuggets anymore. And that is a point of contention for me. I just don't think it's fair. I don't think you should take away their parts. I feel like we should have more humane birth control for cats and dogs by now that doesn't involve, removing their little baby testicles and their reproductive organs. Completely removing them. It just seems unfair to me. I don't know any of the science behind it. Maybe, I have heard it can help fight certain cancers or whatever, or help prevent them altogether, because if you don't have the organ, how can you get the cancer? But I'm not sure if I agree with that as the best argument for removing an animal's body parts. I get the idea that we don't want them overbreeding. I just feel like we should have more humane ways of doing that. I don't know, just me. Next. I don't think he wants to be on camera. He keeps turning his back to the camera, so I think he's like, no, no, Mrs. DeVille. All right, we're gonna move on to socks and tucks. There we go. All right, we're 5 minutes in, and I have not read a word. Let's go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much for being here. And this is a Child for Christmas, a very short story that I wrote. Not super short. I've written shorter. I'm going to go ahead and read the foreword. Again, I wrote it because I was the one kind of doing the admin part of this, and I really just wanted the other authors to be able to create. So I wrote it, I edited it, formatted it, put it all together, and all that stuff, and that's why we have this. And it has not made the money back that it cost to create. And that's fine. That's not, why I did it. I did it because it's fun, and I'd love to do another collection like this. But I'm going to read the foreword and then move into the story. This collection is, in essence, a fulfilled Christmas wish. I should say that I have not read this foreword or this story pretty much since publishing it, because, I move on, and it was out, it was done. So if something sucks, I didn't know that before I got on this live stream. Okay. This collection is, in essence, a fulfilled Christmas wish. What started as a mere idea thrown out in response to an unpleasant experience has become something I am immensely proud to share. Creating this anthology was certainly no easy feat. From formatting delays to overcoming language differences and the world's tightest deadline, Voices of Christmas, named for the online group Voices of Color, of which we're all members, has seen its fair share of trial and error. The experience of putting this collection together doesn't compare to the joy of the new friendships made. Things may not have gone so smoothly if my fellow authors weren't so smart, charming, and easy to work with. I'm truly and deeply honored to have participated in the creation of this book. These 3 twisted Christmas stories are sure to thrill, titillate, and fill you with awe. So get cozy and settle in for a night of delicious holiday decadence that may leave you asking, what is the true meaning of Christmas? That's a weird formatting thing that happened. That's true, though. The people I did this book with are still people I value very much. They are so smart and so talented, and one of them especially, I talked to her a little more than the other. Everything she's written that I've seen has like blown me away. Like, she's so freaking talented. I'm really, really proud that I have my name in a book with her, because she's going places. All right. So, A Child for Christmas. Each section has a title. The good folk came in the night. Cold wind and hail assaulted the quiet Illinois suburb of Hollowtail Grove the night Brianna and Rashad Dorsey adopted their son Tyler. The couple ran from the small, squat building to their car, shielding the 2-year-old under their umbrella. Brianna slipped into the passenger seat, sat Tyler on her lap, and pulled the seat around both their midsections. I know you'll love our new home, sweetheart. She kissed the soft curls resting on Tyler's head and inhaled his sweet scent. It's too bad you missed Thanksgiving. He craned his neck to look up at her. Mama? Brianna grinned at her husband. Hear that? He already knows. The small vehicle rumbled to life as Rashad started the ignition. He raised an eyebrow and smiled back. Are we sure he's okay? I know what the agent said, but... He shrugged, focusing his eyes on the road. What? He's perfect, babe. Brianna tightened her arms around Tyler, who busied himself by sucking on her finger and fiddling with the stuffed reindeer they had given him. Rashad tilted his head. He seems thin. Did they feed him enough? He was only one of 2 brown kids. Wow, Rashad. Brianna rolled her eyes. Are you implying the agency starved this baby because he's Hispanic? Do you hear yourself? Next, you're going to tell me the process took so long because we are black. Okay, okay. Rashad glanced at the dozing toddler. He is so small and fragile, though. Brianna laughed, her voice echoing the clank of ice hitting the car roof. Well, now he's got us to take care of him. He'll never go hungry again. She kissed Tyler's head again, letting him suck her finger as he snored in her lap. Rashad took her free hand in his, and the couple smiled the rest of their journey home. From the speckled hen, 9 eggs I stole. Pale yellow sunlight saturated the Dorsey household as the family prepped for breakfast in their small modern kitchen. Rashad flicked his wrist, tossing the golden pancake on his pan into the air. He let out a triumphant "ha" when it landed neatly on the plate in his other hand, and winked at Brianna and Tyler as their laughter filled the room. Brianna tickled the boy's tummy, giggling along with him as he squirmed in his high chair. She dipped her thumb into his banana pudding, then popped it into his mouth. Rashad wrinkled his nose. You can't be bothered to use a spoon? He placed the plate, topped with a steaming tower of pancakes, in front of her and sat on Tyler's other side. It seems a little unsanitary. You're such a worrier, babe. Brianna laughed, pulling her thumb free so she could pick up her fork. Tyler whimpered and reached out for her, his bottom lip trembling with the coming onslaught of tears. Brianna caressed his cheek with the finger of her other hand. She swiped her finger across syrup-soaked butter and let Tyler suckle on that as she ate. Rashad rolled his eyes and opened his mouth to speak. The ringing bell at the front door cut him off. The couple exchanged a glance as Rashad pushed himself away from the table. He raised an eyebrow. The bell rang again. You expecting someone this early? Brianna shrugged, her eyes remaining glued to Tyler's face. She watched him scoop pudding onto his little red spoon and shove it into his mouth. Rashad sighed, turning towards the living room when the bell rang a third time. All right, hold your bladder, he called out, yanking the door open. He sucked his teeth and lifted his arm to rub the back of his head. Good morning, Sheila. He plastered a stiff smile on his face. Sheila Fuentes gazed up at Rashad. He stood at least a foot taller than her, but she never seemed to notice. A wide grin spread across her face. You gonna let me in, Chief? Let me see the new baby? Before Rashad muttered an answer, Sheila pushed back, past, knocking him aside with a swing of a hip. She clapped as she entered, her voice high as she sang out, Oh, darling, he's handsome! Brianna shot out of her seat. Hey, Sheila, what are you doing here? She ran a sticky hand through her loose curls and wiped her palms on her pants. Tyler's introduction isn't for another week. Not until the Christmas party. I know, Sheila said with a wave of her hand. I couldn't wait to see. He's such a handsome little devil. Brianna tried again. We want him to get used to his new home before he meets anyone. Used to us? She rubbed the boy's curls as he gazed up at her. We were hoping for some family time. Sheila laughed, sending ripples of motion throughout her body. Every chuckle created a new wave. Brianna glanced at Rashad. Sure enough, he watched Sheila's body as she sashayed to Tyler's side and knelt. Brianna followed her husband's gaze to the woman's ample backside pressing against her jeans. She crossed her arms. We have a long day planned, Sheila. Oh, mija, he's so light-skinned. Sheila winked at Rashad. Is our mocha hubby not the papa? Brianna rolled her eyes. Heat colored her amber cheeks. Get the hell out of my house. Sheila gasped, bringing a hand to her chest. Whoa, Bree. Rashad wrapped an arm around his wife's shoulders. He offered her smile to their neighbor, who smiled back. Sheila stood and moved towards the back door. I can see you're stressed, Brianna. I'll cut across the yards. See you at the party. Brianna waited for the click of the door before sitting and letting out a large breath. She shook her head. Can you believe that woman? Believe her? Rashad cocked his head to the side. Babe, she was being friendly. You know how she is. I'm sure you thought her ass in those low-cut jeans was real friendly. Rashad's grin spread. He burst into laughter. Is that what's up? You're jealous? He rolled his eyes. Bree, I can't help it if the woman is curvy. Excuse me? Brianna lifted Tyler from his high seat, supporting him with her hip and gazing into his eyes. Why don't you go to her then? Rashad pulled Brianna to him, taking her and Tyler into his long arms. I got all the curves I need with you. You're perfect, like God made us for each other. Brianna scoffed and glanced away. She bounced the toddler on her hip and smiled. I'm going to wash these layers of pudding off of our child. She leaned up and pulled Rashad's face close for a kiss. Please, no more visitors today. He chuckled, smacking her bottom as she carried Tyler towards the bathroom and began clearing the remnants of their barely eaten breakfast. And this is his trouble and woe confessed. Brianna's hands pressed against her chest as she sat up in bed. Her breath came in ragged spurts and her heart danced a rapid beat. She sighed when she recognized Rashad's hand on her shoulder. Another nightmare? He gazed into her eyes, his own eyes soft and questioning. Brianna shook her head. It's fading, she whispered, her voice trembling. I was nursing Tyler. He bit me with these pointy little teeth. She shivered, letting out a short chuckle. She slid out of the bed and smiled down at Rashad. It must be the stress of party prep. Rashad grunted and pushed himself off the bed. You sure? He turned to straighten the sheets. You've been having these nightmares for a week, ever since we brought Tyler home. Brianna groaned, heading for the bathroom. I'm just saying, maybe it's not the party you're stressing about. He eats like a man but hasn't gained an ounce. It would concern any new mother. Rashad followed her, gazing at her long legs as she bent to turn on the shower. Look, why don't you take Tyler to get groceries and I'll set up here? Wow, guys. Nobody likes paparazzo. Brianna stepped into the steaming water and peeked around the corner. You'll cook, and clean the house, and put up more directions? Rashad laughed. Yeah, you relax today, babe. Let me take care of everything. He left the room before Brianna could respond. 20 minutes later, she found him dressing Tyler in the kitchen. The toddler fussed as Rashad pulled a red sweater over his head. The words Santa's little monster circled a snow-covered skeleton on the front. She sat, digging into the plate, already waiting for her. Look at that, she sighed. The love of my life. Sorry, guys. I'm really sorry if that was loud. In his garden, strode up and down. Doris Day's somber rendition of Toyland played through the grocery store speakers. Brianna pushed a silver cart down an aisle of baking goods, contemplating whether to serve sweet potato or pecan pie. Tyler swung his feet in the front seat. He babbled as though telling a story only he could understand. My, he is lovely today. Sheila pushed her cart around the corner, angled in a way that blocked Brianna from moving forward. She placed a hand on her chest. Pardon, Brianna. I wanted to apologize for the last time I saw you. Brianna waved a hand. Don't worry about it, Sheila. I was stressed out. No, no, no. The woman grinned down at the little boy in the cart. Look at him. So handsome. I'm sorry if I exposed any secrets or hidden kinks. It's not my business what anyone does in the bedroom. For God's sake, Sheila. Heads turned their way as Brianna's voice rang out. She took a deep breath. You know damn well we adopted Tyler. She spoke through gritted teeth. Sheila gasped. Oh no, I didn't. Lo siento, mija. I wondered how you lost the weight so fast. You're not able to have one yourself. The corners of her lips turned down in a pitiful attempt at sympathy, and she reached for Brianna's arm. Brianna yanked her arm away, an incredulous laugh escaping her lips. Why do you insist on causing drama? Do you need more divorced friends? Or do you like seeing others go through it so you can forget how sad and lonely you are? Sheila's mouth dropped open, and she blinked back the sudden tears that appeared at the corners of her eyes. Before she gathered her words, the crackling of paper distracted the two women. They looked down. Tyler chewed on a wrapped steak he'd stolen from Sheila's basket. Blood soaked through the paper and dripped down his chin onto the skeleton sweater. Brianna snatched the meat away, her hand shaking at the sight. Sheila laughed her full body, wave-making laugh. Aye, it looks like you got a broken one. FYI, I'm not lonely. I'm rich. She pushed her cart out of the way and walked towards the end of the aisle. You can keep the slobbery meat, she called behind her. Consider it an early Christmas gift. Brianna gritted her teeth. She pushed the cart towards checkout, wiping the last smear of blood from Tyler's chin before the clerk looked up. The neighbors came from far and near. Laughter and music filled the Dorsey household. Guests mingled throughout the house. Their next-door neighbor, Joe Parker, told one of his bad dad jokes in the living room, while his wife, Angela, teased him from across the room. She shared a story of her own with Michael and David Johnson, who lived across the street. The rhythmic clinking of an incoming toast quieted the chatter, and all eyes turned towards Rashad and Brianna. Rashad raised his glass. Thank you all for coming tonight. The guests murmured in return appreciation. We've held this annual Christmas party since we moved to Hollowtail Grove 4 years ago. This year, we have a new addition to carry on our traditions. I'd like to introduce our son, Tyler. The toddler stepped from behind Brianna. He took one look at the crowd and immediately ducked away. Rashad grinned and turned up the drink in his hand. Merry Christmas, he said after he emptied the glass. Laughter and clapping rolled through the room. The guests cheered, Merry Christmas, and returned to their conversations. Rashad made his way towards the Johnsons, and Brianna scooped the boy into her arms. Did that crowd make you nervous? She asked. Tyler nodded, pulling her pinky into his mouth. She bounced him on her hips for a few minutes before setting him down. Why don't you play with the other kids over there? She pointed to the small playroom that had once been Rashad's home office. Mama's got to go check on the pies. Tyler waddled towards the playroom, and Brianna headed for the kitchen, stopping on her way to kiss Rashad and greet the Johnsons and Parkers. Rashad watched her disappear into the kitchen before continuing his story about the guy at work who used 10 sugar packs in his single espresso. When the story ended, David leaned forward and lowered his voice. Is everything all right? He gestured towards the kitchen. She's the thinnest I've ever seen her, and I don't mean that as a compliment. Has she been sleeping well? Have you seen any signs of post-adoption depression? Michael laid a hand on David's arm. Leave the notepad at home, Dr. Johnson. I'm sure Rashad doesn't need any psychobabble at his party. The men chuckled and Rashad rubbed the back of his neck. Now that you mention it, he sighed, I don't know about depression, but she's been irritable and having nightmares. A scream from the kitchen pierced through the music and the mingling party voices died down. Rashad dashed to the kitchen door. Brianna? Angel Parker hugged Brianna while another neighbor saw to Sheila. The woman's hand bled over the kitchen sink, while Brianna sat at the table sobbing and apologizing. Rashad moved to her side. Bree, what happened? Tears streaked Brianna's makeup. She shook her head. It slipped. I didn't mean to cut her. She was behind me. I know, mija. You need to rest is all. Sheila winced as cold water poured over the gas in her palm. You're obviously exhausted, and that can make a person dizzy. Rashad guided Brianna to the living room, his hands on her shoulders. Go check on Tyler, babe. I'll help Sheila. Brianna blinked back the tears still pouring from her eyes. I didn't mean to. I didn't. Honey, it's okay. Why don't you go check on the kids? She nodded and walked with stiff legs to the playroom. Tyler played alone in a corner, while other neighborhood children played in groups around the room. She knelt beside him. Why aren't you playing with the other kids, sweetheart? Tyler shook his head and crawled into her lap. Mama. He showed her his stuffed lion, and she bounced him on her knee. She mumbled sweet words, but aimed her attention at Rashad and Sheila across the room. He wrapped the woman's hand in a bandage, and they laughed, their heads too close for Brianna's comfort. She bit her tongue, watching the two chat the night away. He pulled his beard and he beat his breast. Later that night, Brianna and Rashad lay side by side in bed. For a long time they stared at the ceiling in silence. Brianna turned to her side. How was it? Rashad raised an eyebrow. How was what? Sheila's hand. Oh. Rashad sighed. I think she'll be okay. She won't need stitches. What time did she leave? You two seem to be talking a lot. Rashad grunted and gazed at Brianna. You're being paranoid. I asked a simple question. Brianna huffed and sat up, crossing her arms over her midsection. Rashad followed suit, sitting up beside her. There is nothing simple about you, babe. You've been harping on this Sheila thing since we moved here. She came at me once and I brushed her off. Nothing has ever happened between me and that woman. How am I supposed to know that, Shad? She's always over here, getting in your face and taking shots at me. Why should I believe you? Rashad stood and paced the floor. Why? How about because I am your husband? How about you trust me? God damn it, Bree, He stopped. Tyler stood in the doorway, clutching his lion, tears falling from his chin. Rashad rushed to the boy, bending to pick him up. Tyler shook his head and pulled away. He reached for Brianna instead. Mama. Rashad straightened and licked his lips. He rubbed the back of his neck and stepped back as Brianna came to scoop Tyler into her arms. She popped a finger into his mouth and shushed him. She glanced back at Rashad. He flopped backwards onto the bed, rolling his eyes as she carried the toddler out of the room. They crossed themselves. He has no luck. The Parkers' party fell on Christmas Eve this year. Brianna applied the last swipes of lipstick and blew a kiss to her reflection. You almost ready? Rashad called from the front door. Dylan's here. He stepped aside to let the teenager in. He pulled a few bills from his wallet and handed them to the young man. We'll be back in a few hours. We've already put him down for the night, so you should have an easy time. No problem, sir. Dylan pocketed the cash. He waved at Brianna as she rounded the corner. Hi, Mrs. D. Have you lost weight? Brianna blushed. Hey, Dylan. Are you enjoying winter break? How's your mom? She's doing good. He smiled. She said she's looking forward to seeing you at the party. She don't believe I made an A in your class. Brianna smiled and cupped Dylan's chin in her hands. One day, she'll see how smart you are, sweetheart. Rashad cleared his throat. We should get going. He patted Dylan on the shoulder. There's food in the fridge. Have anything you want. Cable and internet have restrictions enabled. He nudged the boy, so no skin flicks. Dylan looked at his feet, a shy smile peeking at the corners of his mouth. No, sir, he said, holding back a giggle. Rashad wrapped his arms around Brianna. We'll see you in a few hours. Within moments, their car pulled out of the driveway and disappeared into the dark of night. They returned home hours later to a darkened house. Not even television light flickered through the windows. Brianna signaled to Rashad to stay quiet as she stuck her key into the door. Dylan? She whispered into the dark hallway. He must have fallen asleep. Rashad flicked on the soft yellow hall light. They checked the living room couch, but found it empty. Tyler's room? Brianna led the way to the toddler's bedroom. Tyler played in his crib. He squeezed and chewed a stuffed giraffe. Brianna ran to him and pulled him into her arms. Hello, my sweet, she cooed. What are you doing still awake? A loud thump sounded above their heads. Rashad's brows knit as he stared at the ceiling. Brianna moved to set Tyler in his crib. Ah! Tyler gripped Brianna's loose curls in a single hand. With the other, he pulled her face towards him. Mama! He cried. Brianna glanced at Rashad and picked the toddler back up. You go check that out, babe. I don't think Tyler wants to be left alone. Rashad leaned forward and kissed the top of Brianna's head. I'll be right back. He walked into the hall, stopping in the center to look up, and pulled down a hanging cord. The attic ladder fluttered to the ground, landing with a thud. Dylan? The sterile vapor of bleach wafted from the attic in response, along with the sound of liquid sloshing. Rashad rushed up the ladder, calling the sitter's name. Dylan lay on the wood floor. His hands and feet twitched, and his eyes rolled up so that only the white underneath showed. The overturned jug beside him poured onto the wooden slats, forming small rivulets towards Rashad's feet. Rashad ran to Dylan's side and pulled him into his arms. Foam and vomit trailed from the boy's mouth as his entire body quaked. Bree? Rashad whipped out his cell phone and hit emergency. Bree! He called again. Hello? I need an ambulance. 112 Thornway in Hollowtail. Someone's been poisoned. Bleach? I think he drank bleach? Come on, Shad. I just got Tyler to sleep. Brianna poked her head into the attic. Oh no, how did this... She didn't finish her statement. She disappeared for a moment before returning with a water pitcher and poured the water into Dylan's face and mouth. Sirens wailed as red and blue lights flashed outside the Dorsey house. Brianna ran to let the paramedics in. Within minutes, they placed Dylan onto a stretcher and pushed him out into the cul-de-sac. All the neighbors of Thornway watched from their lawns, many still in their formal wear from the Parkers' party. Macy Peterson dashed through the 3 yards between her house and the Dorsey house. Her screams rang out over the sirens. What happened? Her breath fluttered in spurts as she ran to her son's side. Brianna pulled the distraught woman into a tight hug. Why? Macy watched the paramedics load Dylan into the back of their ambulance. Her knees buckled under her, and Brianna stumbled to catch her. Why would he do something like this? Brianna shook her head. I'm so sorry. We can't know why until he wakes up. Now go be with your son. He needs you. Macy nodded and climbed into the back of the ambulance, taking Dylan's hand into her own as the doors closed behind them. The crowd thinned as neighbors turned back to their homes. Brianna met Rashad at their door, where he answered a detective's questions. The detective flipped his notebook shut as Brianna walked up. Thank you, he said. We'll call if we need anything else. You folks try to get some sleep. Merry Christmas. He tipped his hat and turned back towards his car. As they opened their door to go inside, Sheila's voice rose among the straggling crowd of neighbors. What a dangerous environment for a little child. I will never let something like that happen in my house. Brianna grit her teeth and squared her shoulders. She took a step towards the gossiping woman, but Rashad held her back. Let it go, he said, pulling Brianna through the doorway. She's not worth the energy, babe. Let's go to sleep. A bar of metal, a heated red. A cold field, no light. A wetness soaks between Brianna's bare toes. Her heart pumps wild with the rush of adrenaline. A red door glows ahead. She runs to it, reaching out. The door opens when she arrives, and she steps into a warm, quiet kitchen. It looks like hers, but different. These dishes aren't her dishes. The pictures on the fridge aren't her pictures. She passes through and finds herself standing on a plush carpet. Her toes wiggle in something warm and sticky. She looks down, but it's too dark to see her feet. A white light flashes. A scream fills the night. I fried the shells and I spilt the yolk. Brianna gasped. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked around and breathed a sigh of relief to be in the safety of her room. Strong midday sunlight slipped between the curtains, lighting the empty spot where Rashad slept. Only he wasn't there. Brianna stepped from the bed and let the sheets slip from her naked body. Babe, she called out, did you take off my pajamas? She pulled her blue silk robe over her arms and headed to Tyler's room. Dishes clinked in the kitchen and she smiled, wondering what Rashad made for breakfast. Tyler sat up in his crib. He reached for Brianna, who scooped him into her arms. Oof, she groaned. Are you getting heavier, bud? Tyler grinned and pulled her finger into his mouth. She dressed the toddler in a pair of denim overalls. You're perfect, Brianna said, a dreamy smile lighting her face. In the kitchen, she sat the boy in his high chair. Good morning, babe. Rashad kept his back to her as he scraped scrambled eggs from the skillet. Babe? Brianna laid a hand on his shoulder. Look, I want to apologize for the other day. Accusing you of sleeping with Sheila, I wanted to say it isn't fair. Rashad turned, his face stone. Maybe you're projecting, he said through clenched teeth. He slammed a plate of eggs and grits onto the table and placed a small bowl of fruit in front of Tyler. Brianna blinked, raising her eyebrows. Excuse me? What's gotten into you? Where were you, Brie? Rashad bit his bottom lip. His foot tapped the linoleum floor. Brianna shrugged. I don't know what you're talking about. Last night? Rashad leaned against the counter. I woke up at 3 a.m. and you weren't here. I searched the whole house. What? Brianna narrowed her eyes and sank into the nearest chair. I didn't go anywhere. You came back an hour later and headed straight for the shower. A laugh erupted from Brianna and she slapped a hand over her mouth. I never laughed. She shook her head. Are you messing with me, Shad? Did you take off my pajamas to pull this little prank? Cut the crap. Rashad's jaw twitched. All this time, you accused me of messing around to cover up your own shit. He pushed off the counter and leaned over her. Who is it? Geez, babe, you are stretching here. Geez, babe, you are stretching here. Brianna took a deep breath. She reached for Rashad's hand. I swear to you, I am not sleeping around. Rashad slammed his fist on the table. The plates rattled and Tyler dropped his spoon onto the floor. The toddler stared up at Rashad, an unblinking gaze boring holes into the man's face. Rashad turned away and rubbed the back of his neck. When he turned back, tears reddened his eyes. What were you doing out at 3 a.m, babe? Before Brianna could utter a response, sirens blared outside. Rashad ran to the window. An ambulance, a fire truck, and a horde of police cruisers littered Sheila's driveway. He turned to Brianna and narrowed his eyes. Did you do something to Sheila? Brianna's eyes widened. How could you ask me that? She stood to face him and glanced out the window. I can't stand the woman, but do you really think I'd hurt her? Rashad looked at his wife for a long moment. Then, without a word, he walked out the back door. Sorry, guys. I just want you to be able to see kittens. That's all. I think she's sitting up sleeping. Socks, are you asleep? But my wife had hidden it in her arms. Paramedics wheeled a gurney through Sheila's front door. A zipped black bag laid atop. Rashad jogged across the yards towards a man who spoke to a detective, the same detective from the night before. He waved at the two men. Joe? Ed? He addressed Detective Joe Parker. What happened here? Hey, Chief. I'm getting a statement from Mr. Kasich now. Joe scribbled in his notebook. Now, you say you were supposed to meet Miss Fuentes for breakfast, and she never showed? Ed nodded. Sheila is never late. I waited for an hour, then came here to see what happened. I have a key, so I went in and... He covered his mouth with both hands and closed his eyes. Rashad placed a hand on his shoulder. I know this is hard. Can you tell us what you saw inside? Ed took a shuddering breath. Her blood? It was everywhere. And glass? What kind of person stabs a woman to death like that? He shook his head and turned away. Rashad patted the man's back. Sheila's got a security system. Has anyone looked at the video files? He directed his question to Detective Parker. Someone's on that now, sir. He's spoken to the radio on his shoulder. Any word on the security footage? After a moment, a voice crackled back. We've got a woman coming through the back door. Rashad's stomach turned. What time? Joe asked and waited for the response. Around 3:30 a.m., the crackling voice replied. Rashad squeezed his eyes shut. Thanks, Joe. Take care of everything here. I'll see you back at the station. He stepped back towards his house and ran through the front door. For sure, the woman is very struck. Brianna and Tyler played in the living room. They sat on the floor, Tyler babbling as Brianna waved his toy reindeer in front of his face. She glanced up and smiled. Everything okay? Rashad rubbed his chin and gestured towards the kitchen. Can I talk to you for a minute? He led Brianna into the other room and leaned against the counter. He looked into her eyes, inspected the deep brown circles beneath. Her clothes fell on her frame like drapes over a skeleton. What's going on, Bree? He shook his head. Sheila's dead. Brianna blinked. Oh, you don't sound all that surprised. He rubbed a hand over his tired eyes. Bree, they have a woman on camera. I didn't see the video, but I know it's you. Brianna took a step back, her hands on her chest. You think I killed someone? How could you think something so horrible of me, Shad? I'm your wife. Rashad sucked his teeth. Are you sure? You've been distant and paranoid. Hell, you cut Sheila a few weeks ago. Remember that? Tears fell from his eyes. You've changed. Brianna's eyes widened. So I'm a killer now? Because I've been a little stressed? Rashad shrugged and shook his head. I don't want to believe it. She bit her lip and stared at her husband. You're serious? After a long silence, she gasped and furrowed her brows. Are you trying to take Tyler away from me? Rashad cocked his head. What? No, this has nothing to do with him. Oh, doesn't it? Brianna inched closer to the counter. If you think I'm a killer, that means you want me locked up. I want you to get some help, Bree. Rashad stared at his hands. I don't know what's happened, but I want to help you get better. Brianna laughed. Yeah, I'm sure you do. Rashad looked up. I already talked to David. He said you might have post-adoption depression or psychosis or something. He grabbed her shoulders. Let us help you, Bree. I swear, if I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have agreed to adopt. Brianna's mouth dropped open, and she stepped back. Tyler is my world. This isn't healthy for you. Brianna shook her head. She sneered at Rashad, narrowing her eyes. I'm glad she was dead. She deserved it. Her voice became low and menacing. She wanted to tear apart my family, and I am not letting anyone take that boy away from me. Rashad closed his eyes and sighed. You're sick, babe. You're going crazy. Brianna lunged at Rashad, knocking him into the counter and onto his back. She swung at him, her hands like claws swiping at his face. You can't have him! She screamed, her eyes wild with fury as she slammed down onto his crossed arms. He guarded his face and tried to roll to the side, but she rolled with him. She reached up as they rolled, grabbing a long knife from the sink. She brought it down fast. Rashad moved faster. His training taught him not to think. He diverted her hands with a swift push, and the knife sank into Brianna's torso. It entered her with a sickening squelch. Blood shot into Rashad's mouth. Brianna blinked, her brows knit in confusion. She slumped over to the side, falling in a heap on the linoleum floor. Brianna? Rashad's entire body trembled as he scrambled to his knees. He leaned over his wife. She stared up at him, her gasping, rasping breath coming in spurts. Brianna, no. His voice caught in his throat, obscured by an uncontrolled sob. She reached out past him, looking towards the kitchen door. She tried to whisper, but no sound came forth. After a moment, she gasped, her final breath before the light faded from her eyes. Rashad screamed, a primal, guttural scream. His chest tightened. He fought to suck in air. Dada? Rashad teetered on the brink of panic, but Tyler's voice cut through the static. Rashad blinked. The boy stood at the kitchen door, clutching his stuffed animal to his chest. Rashad rushed to Tyler and picked him up, hugging him tight in his arms. Oh man, I am so sorry. Tyler clutched one of Rashad's fingers, Brianna's blood still wet on his hand, and pulled it into his mouth. Rashad flinched as a tiny teeth pricked his finger, and the boy began to drink. A blissful, glowing peace surged through Rashad, and he smiled. He stared down at the boy in his arms, ignoring the gruesome sight of his wife's body. Well, Merry Christmas, he said. I'll always protect you, my perfect boy. That's it. That is the end of A Child for Christmas. The headings that I used are actually from a poem. I didn't use the whole poem because obviously that would be like a copyright situation. But let me see. Let me see if I can find the poem. I don't remember exactly the name of it, so I need to like remind myself, and then I can give it to you guys and let you guys know where you can find this poem. Hold on. So I'm going to have to look up some of these lines. The good folk came in the night. That might actually be the name of the poem. I don't know, guys. If I was like a better, if I had a better brain, I would be able to give you guys more information. If I had better Googling skills, maybe. I don't know. After I read a story or watch a movie or listen to a story, the truth is my brain kind of sits in that space for a bit. And usually if it's a story that really, really, really grabs me. So this story, I'm in it for like a minute after it's over. It's a very short story. But then if it's something longer, then it lasts longer. So like yesterday, I watched Heathers for the first time. And oh my gosh, guys. It's still sticking with me. It's still like in there. Where the balls is this poem? For real though. I swear. This is someone's poem that someone wrote that is heading these pieces in my short story, and I just can't freaking find it. From the speckled hen, 9 eggs I stole. Let's try that. The Fairy Changeling. That is the poem. So you know what? Since we've only been here for about, we have like, I like these videos to be maybe like an hour long or so. Obviously, like if that's not the case, I'm totally fine with that. But since it has not been a full hour, and we still got some cats chilling over here, this is Tux. Hello, Tux Boy. Are you handsome? Are you super handsome? Yes, you are. You are a super handsome baby. This is the Fairy Changeling by Dora Sigerson Shorter. Sorry about the siren. Let's let that pass. Or not, it doesn't have to pass. I don't care. All right, The Fairy Changeling by Dora Sigerson Shorter. This is the poem that is like a header on my in the pieces in this short story. Brian O'Byrne of Omagh town in his garden strode up and down. He pulled his beard and he beat his breast, and this is his trouble and woe confessed. The good folk came in the night, and they have stolen my bonny wean away, have put in his place a changeling, a weeshy, weakly, wizen thing. From the speckled hen 9 eggs I stole, and lighting a fire of a glowing coal, I fried the shells and I spilt the yolk, but never a word the stranger spoke. A bar of metal I heated red, to frighten the fairy from its bed, to put in the place of this fretting wean, my own bright, beautiful boy again. But my wife had hidden it in her arms, and cried for shame on my fairy charms. She sobs with the strange child on her breast. I love the weak wee babe the best. To Brian O'Byrne's the tale to hear, the neighbors came from far and near. Outside his gate in the Long Boreen, they crossed themselves and said between their mattered prayers, he has no luck, for sure the woman is fairy struck, to leave her child a fairy guest, and love the weak wee ween the best. So yes, that is a song about a poem about a fairy child and a changeling child, which is of the Fae. And if you've never heard of changelings, they were basically these beings, these Fae beings that would be like a Fae creature would come in and replace your baby with a changeling, and it would look just like your baby, but it would be sick and weakly and small, and it would basically make the mother love it so much until she gave everything of herself and died for it. And in that poem, the husband is trying all kinds of different anti-fairy tricks to rid his home of this changeling. The sad thing about that is that in real life, these were things people did, and they would like burn babies with iron. They would throw like certain herbs at children. They would even go as far as like drowning children because they didn't believe it was their baby, especially if the baby was weak or had some sort of deformity or deficiency or some other health issue. They wouldn't believe it was meant to be their child. They would believe it was replaced. Their perfect, awesome baby was replaced by this broken baby, and so they would do these horrible, horrible things to prove that the baby wasn't theirs, and it often ended up kind of either very, very much injuring the child or killing it all outright, which was very sad. Obviously, in A Child for Christmas, that's not what happened. The child won in the end. He went from feeding on mother to feeding on father, and creating strife everywhere he goes, which could describe me too, as far as like creating strife everywhere I go. Ha ha ha. It's a fun. It's a fun. All right, well, there's a cat butt and some sadly soon to be removed cat testicles. Thank you guys so much for being here, for putting up with me and the amount of testicles I show on all of my social media. Monkeys, cats, rats, all testicles are equal under God. So have some respect for the balls. And please like and subscribe. Don't leave me. Don't unsubscribe just because I'm talking about balls. I swear I talk about other stuff too, like balls. I don't know. All right. So like I said, I woke up, I did a thing, and then I did this thing. I haven't had breakfast yet. I haven't. I've been drinking water, but that's pretty much it. I've been at my computer since waking up hours ago, doing computer stuff. So I love you all. I'll see you next week. I hope you're very well. I hope you have something that makes you smile, something that makes you feel nice and warm. And if you do and you're able to, I'd like to ask that you send me some nice, warm, fuzzy feelings and energy of love and support and growth, because Goddess knows it is needed at this time. I love you all. I hope you're well. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're joyful. I hope you enjoyed these cats and this story. And I will see you next Saturday. Take care.